Have you ever wondered if the court cases in real life are the same as what they are on TV? Are they even close? Or what if I use a life-saving tool? What happens if I go to court? Am I just going to win because I know my story's right? Well, we're going to kind of get into that in this episode of the Range Minded Podcast with my guest, Steve Yerger. And that's his job, is he helps people in their defensive cases. This is a pretty interesting interview. I hope you'll find some value in it. And anyway, it is what it is. Defending Self-Defense, episode 258. Can you believe that? Anyways, enjoy this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. Just so you guys know, the audio in the first probably 20 minutes or so of this episode aren't that great, and I apologize for that. It just is what it is. I tried to do some different changes, and it just didn't work out the way I hoped. If you can get through those first 20 minutes or so, the audio gets better, and so does the image, actually, if you're watching on video. Anyways, don't give up on me, folks. Don't give up on me. Just some technical difficulties. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. And today, I'm excited because I have a guest. His name's Steve, and Steve is from Idaho, but it's not me. I'm not interviewing myself. It's my buddy, Steve Yerger. I say that right, Yerger? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because nothing's worse than saying somebody's name wrong. That's the only thing you really own in the end of it.
I'm pretty much good with anything as long as you don't call me like a jackass or something.
Okay, good. I mean, that's usually what I get called. So, anyway, Steve, why don't you let the listeners know a little bit about you, what you do, and what got you where you're at?
So, years ago, I had numerous training centers doing use of force training. Everything from, open hand self-defense, martial arts, edged and impact weapons, firearms, tasers, chemical spray. I have one training center now. It's in Nampa, Idaho. And in the course of doing that, I started getting asked to do other things. For example, an attorney asked me if I could do an investigation on a use of force case he had. Well, so I started doing private investigative work. And then I got asked to look at the case, consult on it for an attorney. And I didn't know this attorney. He had gotten my name from somebody. This is a long ago, I don't remember. And this was actually a federal case where the jail had made some grave mistakes and intentional actions that ended up killing a guy. And it was in their care, custody. So we prevailed in that case, and I told him I've never done that. And he goes, well, you got the qualifications, and I can help you with that part. Well, after that trial, he started giving out my name to other lawyers. And so I just started getting more and more calls to help consult on civil and criminal cases related to people defending themselves, or maybe it was an excessive force issue, private security, because I did have professional private security licenses, credentials for a very, very long time. And so that's how that work got started. And it just got to a level where I finally I got to put this on a website. It's a deal. And every case is different. Sometimes attorneys, they want me to write a report for settlement purposes or mitigation purposes. Sometimes, like I have one attorney that has used me on a bunch of different self-defense homicide cases, and she never has me testify. She has me help her through the whole case process, sit in court, help her in court, jury selection questions, jury selection, and all that. I've just finished a trial today. I'm traveling. And I did the same thing for that lawyer. I did not testify in that case. So that's how that all got started. It wasn't a business plan. Let's put it that way.
Just got kind of blindsided by it, surprised with it.
Yeah, I mean, when I took that first case, I had no intention or thought it would ever happen again. And I've had literally attorneys call me from Alaska, Montana, all over the place. And typically they've gotten my name from someone.
So it's gotten to the point where you don't even, like, they just call you. You don't have to reach out and say, hey, I can do this for you as a service or whatever. Yeah. They just know.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Well, you must be pretty good at it.
I've helped win some cases. Yeah.
So how long has it been since that first case, you think?
Close to 30 years.
30 years. And then over those 30 years, I mean, do you keep track of each case? Like, do you know exactly how many cases you have taken care of?
No, it's in the thousands.
Thousands of cases.
Yeah, I average somewhere between active cases, somewhere between 15 to 30 a month.
That's a lot. That's like one a day. Well, on the 30 side.
Well, what you got to remember is, like, I may review a case, and it could take a year or two to go to trial. So it's not like I'm working on that case every single day, right? Like this case that went to trial, I probably spent 25 hours on that case since I got it last March, before getting ready to help in trial. So that's how you can handle that kind of workload.
Right. So there's
there's cases I haven't taken. I mean, there's been many cases where I have to tell the lawyer, I can't help you. You don't want someone like me on the stand, because someone like me is going to hurt your case more than help it.
Of those thousands of cases, have you taken the stand on every one of those cases, or
no?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I imagine that's a kind of a stressful part of the job, is having to get up there and deal with them.
That's not too bad. I mean, you just, I had 52 hours of training in interviewing and interrogating. So through that training and doing interviews and recorded statements, that I've done thousands of those, you learn to be a very, very specific, clear, active listener. Because when you're on the stand, you have to really pay attention to what is being said to you, or else you could open the door to something that you don't want to talk about, or you may mistake something that can be construed and affect the case in a negative way.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure, I think, at least on my side, because I've never had to take the stand for anything. So from my end, it's like, man, that seems stressful.
It's not too bad. I mean, it's like anything else. Once you've done it, who knows how many times. It's getting prepared for it, and some of the stuff that I have to review, and knowing that in some of these cases, my work is impacting whether somebody's going to do 25 years plus in a prison or 40 to life. That's what makes it stressful, is understanding that could happen.
Sure.
Right.
So previous to those 30 years, how long have you been doing training, as an instructor? So
we opened our first training center in, I think it was 1991.
And like you said, you still have one active. At your height of training, how many centers were you running?
There was six.
Holy.
There was six. Um, three three of those I opened and owned, and then three I helped other people open, and then I oversaw their management, and I trained the person running the training center.
Sure. So you already had your hands way full.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Was there anything in your instructor career that you felt prepared you? I mean, obviously there's some applications of teaching force, the use of force, but do you feel like there's something through those years of training and instructing that set you up to be in a better place to help these people in their court proceedings?
I think because of the type of training and training that I've taken, that was helpful. My training is a little bit different in the sense that, like, if you're going to come and take a firearms course from me, you can't just say, "Oh, hey, I want to take your low light shooting." There's other trainings you have to take from me before you're going to take that. Now, I have had people who, in talking to them, I know and have found out the quality of training they've had, and they've had those other types of trainings, and I might let somebody like that in. But I'm pretty specific, especially when if I'm teaching anything to deal with deadly weapons. You're going to start here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because I want you to have certain skills that are going to build on each other. And I want them to be ready to go into like conflict simulation training or reality-based training. So, it's, and especially with those types of topics, I won't teach anybody how to use any type of deadly force unless they take a training I have on defending self-defense, which is just a cognitive PowerPoint-based training. Because I want them to know what they're getting into potentially if they were sued and were criminally charged. Because most 99.9% of gun owners, they have no clue, or people taking deadly force training. They think they know, but they really don't know.
That's kind of what intrigues me about you, and I think maybe that's how we even connected, or why we connected, is because there's a lot of because I've instructed quite a few people in my short tenure, not as experienced as you are on that level, but I've helped a lot of people in their education and on their path. But you're right, that's teaching the decision making, or the defending self-defense, as you put it. Like, that's just not out there. That doesn't exist. I don't know of any other instructors that take the time to let their students know, hey, this is a big deal. The steps that you're about to take are a big deal.
Yeah. So when I got involved in consulting and assisting lawyers, and let's be clear, I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. I share information I get from attorneys and working with them with these honest cases. But when I saw what was happening to people in real life self-defense cases and how they were being handled, it completely changed how I train people. Like, I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, yeah, I've been teaching good information, but really what I've done for a long time is teach people how to end up possibly losing everything they've ever worked for or going to prison. So, and I'm not comfortable. I see it all the time. And,
right.
And if we're going to go, I mean, even if you break somebody's arm, right, or you disfigure them in some way, you can be criminally charged for that. on different. I mean, every state's different, but like it's a serious assault, and that you could be looking at anywhere from 12 to 25 years in prison. And they were civilly sued. Fellow nuclear, you take a life. There is it's a coin toss whether you're going to get charged or not. And it depends on the state you're in, really. But like our state, I see people get arrested in what I call anti-gun blue states.
Mm-hmm.
They get arrested and charged for stuff that you would not get arrested and charged for in Idaho because our laws are gun-friendly and self-defense friendly. Having said that, you know, it still happens. I mean, in the last 10 years, I've handled, I think, 5 cases in Idaho, consulted on and worked on. So, look, this is the way. We need trainers that are teaching hard skills, good hard skills, and some of them they don't want to get into that, which I understand. They should at least refer the people they're training, to books or other people where they can get that information.
Right.
For example, I know most trainers will tell people, firearms trainers, they'll tell people, hey, if you fire your gun and somebody is severely injured and or they die, when the police show up, don't talk to them. Don't say a word.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
And while I've got your attention, I wanted to show you something that is now available on the website. It took me forever to get it figured out. It's done now. It's ready to go. I don't know if you can tell behind me, but I love patches. I love lots of patches. You've heard me talk about the show patches, but now they're available online. They're available on the website, so you can get this official Range Minded podcast patch. You can get the coveted, dangerous, and unusual Perry patch. You can get, this one's been a hot seller too, the common use dozer patch. Obviously, everybody needs a dozer. And then the just the standard little tiny 2A patch. So you can show your support for the Second Amendment as well as show your support for the Range Minded podcast. If you want any one of these patches or all of them, they're available at the website, rangemindedpodcast.com, and you can make the purchase and everything right there. It's super easy. I appreciate you guys. Now back to the regular scheduled program. Peace. So it was at this point in the interview, we had some technical difficulties. So you already saw that, or maybe you heard, the audio wasn't that great. I was trying to use a different service. Just things weren't working out, but we fixed it. So from now on, from this point on in the podcast, the sound's a little better. The image is way better. And we continue the conversation with Steve Yerger. Continued.
The people they're teaching, hey, if you seriously injure somebody with a firearm or you end up taking a life, when the police show up, don't say a word. And I get why they say that. Unfortunately, because self-defense is a affirmative defense, meaning you're saying, hey, I did this, but I was justified. And you've heard me talk about this, but just for the other people listening, myself and some other quality criminal defense attorneys that focus on self-defense cases, we try to train people on how to interface with all first responders platforms.
Right.
Because if you have a dead body there and you're not willing to give them any information at all, you're probably going to be arrested. And now you've just triggered a very complicated, expensive problem. So I actually work with people in trainings on, here are some things you could say to help decrease your chances of being arrested. And here's things you don't want to talk about. And you got to know when to shut up. Right?
and officers get the same training for officer-involved
Right.
shootings. They're trained to give a very brief, factual, on-scene statement with very little detail. Hey, I approached the suspect. I told him to leave his hands out. I believed he was reaching for a firearm. I pulled my gun. He kept going. I shot. And that's it. Right? Because those facts are just real basic facts, right? So another example would be you end up shooting somebody that you don't know that's come into your residence, and it's at night. So you call 911, medical, law enforcement's dispatched. They're going to come in, and they're going to be like, what's the deal? I woke up, my alarm was going off. I went out to see what was going on. My dogs were barking, and there was a guy standing in my living room who I didn't know. I had my firearm with me. I told him not to move. He started coming at me. I fired my gun. Shut up. If they start asking questions like, well, what time was it? How many times did you shoot your gun? Or how far away was he? 10 feet? Don't get into that crap, because you're not going to know. You know, anybody that knows anything about survival stress, they know that your memory is not good. Your eyesight might be screwed up. Your hearing, all that happens to you. And so that's just one example of where my training is quite a bit different than just a lot of people. Because there's a lot of instructors, they're not going to say that. And they don't know how to help their clients with that. They don't know. So that's probably the right advice, because they don't know how to help them, right? So
Yeah, it's like when you get the Miranda rights read to you, or if they get read to you, they should be, I guess. Like they say anything that you say can and will be held against you. It's not
they'll use
it's
it.
not it's not going to help you necessarily. So, like you're saying, it's best to say the minimum and let the lawyer handle the rest.
I mean, they may not even Mirandize you and ask you some very basic questions, right? So if they keep asking, what I tell the people I train, if they keep asking you for really minute details, I train them to say something like this: listen, officer, I respect you're just trying to do your job. This was super stressful for me. You know, and I know that you get 48 to 72 hours before you're brought in to give a detailed statement, and you can have your union rep there or a lawyer. All I'm asking for is that same courtesy. 48 to 72 hours, and I'll come in with a lawyer and answer all your questions. And hopefully they're good with that. They might still arrest you.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you can give them just the basic facts, not details other than the known fact. There's a dead guy in your living room. You called 911. This guy is shot. This is not his home. You don't know him. That's just real basic facts that they're going to figure that out anyways, right? So.
Yeah, that's what their investigation's for.
Yeah. Andrew Bronca talks about this in his book.
Which
It's
a great book. If you're the guests out there, if you're planning on carrying, and not just a gun, any kind of life-saving tool, you need to realize that this all falls under the same category of defense. It's not just the use of a gun that could get you hemmed up this way. It could be a fist fight.
Yeah, it could be a knife.
Yeah.
The reason why this is important is because, like most of the people that I've done training for, they would never qualify for public defense, right? It's going to be on their wallet. And let's say you've taken a life. Well, a qualified, good criminal defense attorney that knows how to litigate self-defense, they're going to want somewhere between 300 to 500 grand up front, and that probably won't even get you to trial.
That's crazy.
So, that's why my first thing is, hey, if you can safely walk away from something, do it. Even if you're in the right, just do it, right? Obviously, there's situations where you can't do that, like a home invasion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why I use his books. That's why I give people my phone number. Because the other mistake that people think is, oh, if I get arrested, I'm gonna call a lawyer. Well, do you even know who to call for a lawyer, right? You're just picking a name out of the phone book or off the internet nowadays. And what if it's the weekend? What if you got a holiday and the weekend, right? So I've had people call me, and I'm like, I will help you find the right lawyer.
That's awesome.
Listen, there's a lot of good criminal defense attorneys out there, but not many that really do well with self-defense.
Yeah, a lot of people think, oh, a lawyer's a lawyer. I'll just have my buddy to represent me. That may not be the best case.
No, and the other thing, you got to remember is, like, I've worked on some self-defense shootings where 2 people were shot and killed. Well, the court will only let certain lawyers take cases like that. Like, they basically get like 3 or 4 lawyers that they have the qualifications, not just the degree, to take that case. Because it's a complex case. It could be a capital case. Your basic, like a brandishing charge or something like that, most criminal defense attorneys can help with that, but they typically will call me. I've done a couple of those in Idaho. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is they should have some kind of prepaid legal that pays for the legal expenses up front. And I've handled 2 cases that the company hired the lawyer, and then they gave the lawyer my name. I don't even know how they got my name. I'm like, well, how'd you get my name? And they're like, oh, the company gave it to us. And I'm like, what?
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. I don't even know how that happened, but so they authorized my services to help those lawyers out, and they did a good job. And the one guy was cool. He said, "This is my first self-defense homicide case. I've done other self-defense cases, but I've never had a self-defense homicide case." And he goes, I need a lot of your help on this. And that's a lawyer you can work with.
Nice.
Yeah.
Over the past 30 years of doing this, was there something, I guess, well, let's go back to the first couple of cases. Was there something that like drastically surprised you about doing this that you thought would be different, but it really is not what you expected?
Yeah. After doing this probably for a year, I was shocked. And when I mean shocked, I mean like floored shocked at all the shady shit that prosecutors would do in court to win a case. It's the most insane thing. And it's always funny because in the entertainment, in TVs and movies, they always portray the defense attorneys as being shady, right?
Right.
Yeah. I've seen way more. I'm like, you're really pulling this and you're a prosecutor? Yeah, insane.
That's crazy because, I mean, we live in a litigious society anyways. Chances are that we're going to end up in court for something. Maybe not be for a self-defense case anymore, but I mean, just it could be anything. It could be a traffic ticket and we have to go to court to fight it. And
Yeah.
and we kind of have this perception because of the media that I'm innocent. I'm going to walk away. Like I'm innocent. my story's the right story. This was on Law and Order. Like, I saw them fight this case. I can do this.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny how Hollywood kind of skews reality.
And that mindset can really create problems in a self-defense case, because clients will dig their heels in and on certain things, and they won't listen to the lawyer, or they won't listen to me, because they're like, no, this is self-defense. Well, yeah, it is, but now you're being called a criminal, and they're saying it was a crime, and it's not self-defense. So you got to understand that. Like, people think if they get charged in a self-defense case, they're going to get on the stand and be able to tell their story and just talk about it. That's never going to happen. The rules of evidence don't allow it. You cannot be narrative on the stand, right? There's going to be an objection, and the judge is going to shut that down. And a foundation has to be laid for any questions that are asked by your lawyer. Like, he can't just, your lawyer cannot just ask you random questions. They have to lay a foundation of relevance. And so many times that's what I'm helping the lawyers do. If the client has said, yes, I want a jury trial or a bench trial, I want to testify, I'm helping them lay the foundation with the proper terminology related to that specific case, the totality of that situation for that case, helping with their narrative. Because a lot of these lawyers, they're not gun people or anything like that, right? They don't, like, I'm actually going to do a training in November in Idaho, cost-free, for between 15 and 20 criminal defense lawyers. I'm just doing it for them.
So they can kind of see the reality of the firearms carry side. Is that what you're doing it for?
It's for self-defense, defending self-defense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd think even in Idaho that most attorneys would be like, yeah, I know exactly what the 2A is. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's funny, the misconception, and I see it when I have taught classes. Like, they think now that they're going to get their permit, that I wouldn't say that they feel justified if they have to take a life, but maybe they do in a way. Like, I have my permit, it's my right to defend my family, and it's going to be fine. But we see a lot of national cases, like the Rittenhouse case or the Zimmerman case down in Florida. Like, they may have felt justified, and maybe they were justified in their actions. I'm not saying either or, but they still went to court, and those were lengthy, expensive, and stressful situations for them in the long run. And the public perception of it is it's stressful. They can't go anywhere without being recognized, whether it be good or bad now. Like, they're always going to be judged.
Right. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse still gets a bad rap. I mean, actually, the defense attorney in this case brought up in jury selection Kyle's case. And there was jurors that were like, because his question was this. I said, you need to ask these people before they get on a jury if they believe if you did something that wasn't smart and you put yourself in a situation and then you end up defending yourself, if that's still self-defense. And there was a lot of people that were like, well, Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't even have been there. He shouldn't have been there with the gun. Why was he even there? Right? And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I'm like, those are not people you want on jury.
Right.
Like, I would get rid of those folks. I was in a massive space. I got asked to come in. Kyle was in there. His handlers were in there. And I mean, this space was huge. And people kept coming up saying, yeah, I couldn't believe how they treated you, Kyle, and all the stuff, how they were saying stuff and blah, blah, blah. So finally, since I was one of the VIP moderator people, I got on there and I said, listen, what you people have to understand, especially if you're carrying a gun for self-defense, this is exactly how this goes. What you saw being done to Kyle is done to people weekly in our country. You just don't know about it because it's not a Kyle Rittenhouse case. But this is how this goes. So this is what you need to be prepared for.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, the misconception that the 2A folks have that don't pay attention to the what if side, the left of bang or right of bang side, whatever it's left of bang, right of bang. I can't remember what that book was called anymore now.
Well, yeah. Look, this isn't going to sit well with some people listening to this, but unfortunately, I can say historically what I've discovered is gun owners typically tend to be apathetic about many things. They don't belong to a national 2A group. They don't belong to their state 2A group, right? A lot of them don't even vote. We know there's over 10 million gun owners that don't vote. They just want to own their guns and be left alone and have a permit, or if it's constitutional carry, they're good with that, and go shoot, go shoot at pop cans and whatever, and they think that's good. They're good to go.
Yeah, and I can relate. I can relate to that, like, because everybody wants to be like in this this rose garden of our mind, but reality isn't that way.
Yeah, there's people that won't take training with me because of how I do it. I had a group of dads that their kids go to our preschool. There's 10 of them. And one of them reached out and said, hey, I'm speaking for the group. We really want to come in and get some training from you. I'm like, great. Can I send you an email asking you some questions? No, what do you want? What are your goals? That kind of thing. And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, well, you just need to know right up front that before I ever teach you any live fire shooting skills, you all are going to have to go through a 6 to 8 hour class on defending self-defense and what happens if you're sued or criminally charged. And he kind of paused. We didn't say anything. She said, all right, I'll call you back next week. And well, 2 or 3 weeks go by and I haven't heard from him. So I thought, well, I'll just give him a call. So when I talked to him, he said, well, we talked about this and, you're just too serious. We just want somebody to show us how to shoot. And I go, well, there's a lot of instructors that will do that. But especially since your kids go to our school, I'm not doing that to you.
Yeah.
I want you to have the whole picture. And I've had people go through that training and they're like, no, I've decided I don't want to carry a gun because of the strict liability. It's a strict liability, right? And that's okay. I try to teach this stuff in a way that it motivates people to defend themselves, because now they have a complete package, the mental training part, the physical skill part, and then understanding how these legal systems work, right? Because then when they know that, then they can better prepare themselves to decrease the chances of that happening, right?
Yeah.
And there's a way to document your training that it could be admitted. I mean, it might get excluded by the judge, but if you document your training right, you have a better chance of that being able to come in as evidence, right? So like when I'm teaching the Tooler drill, I want them to document that, because I know from being in court, if a defense attorney marches off 23 to 25 feet, it doesn't look like it to somebody who's never heard of the Tooler drill. They think that's a long ways, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you can show through your training that you have that knowledge, that drill can come in as evidence, which would help educate the jury. Jurors need a lot of education when it comes to real life self-defense, because I still get people, I had a guy in a training earlier this year. He said, hey, do you have to register your hands and feet with the state police, the Napa police, and the sheriff? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, well, you got 3 first-degree black belts. You have a 4th-degree black belt. your hands and feet are deadly weapons. You got to register those. And I'm like, no, that's completely made up. That's a myth. You know, I know how it got started, but you know, or I had somebody last year. If you shoot somebody outside your house, drag them back in. I'm
Oh
like,
my
no,
gosh.
no, don't do that. So I know that your average layperson that has not had any training at all, they think crazy stuff about real life self-defense. Like shoot them in the leg, shoot it out of their hand, you know,
Yeah.
except you can never shoot somebody in the back, right? I've had people say that. And I'm like, well, actually, no, it depends. There's going to be questions about that, and the evidence better match up to why you had to do that.
Right.
But there are scenarios where you might have to do that. And that's why I always tell lawyers, I'm straight up honest with them. I say, look, I'm not a fan of the jury trials. And if your client wants a jury trial, then you need someone to help you with jury selection that knows this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bunch of kooks on there, and your client's going to be toast.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we see that result all the time. I mean, even though like Dexter Taylor's case wasn't necessarily a self-defense case, I mean, he still got roasted for exercising a right which we all felt he should have been able to do. But you're right, the jury is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm willing to risk my future, my family's future on 12 people that may or may not understand it.
Right. And it's interesting they say it's a jury of your peers. Well, really, if it's a jury of my peers, how much training do they have? Do they own guns, et cetera? Because if they're anti-gun people, they're not my peers. They're just
Right.
other humans, right? And what a lot of people, I'll say this, so your folks can understand this. When you're criminally charged, the defendant has rights. You have a right to a jury trial or a bench trial, and no one can make that decision for you. Your attorney will probably consult with you on that. Like, hey, Steve, this is a really good judge for a bench trial. This is how he is found in other self-defense cases, right? Or they may say, I don't know this judge, and I've not looked at their history yet on how they rule and stuff. So we might want to talk about a jury, right? But then you got attorneys that are like, well, do I really want to deal with 12 devils I don't know, or one devil that I don't know, or one devil that I do know? So right. the client gets to choose that. The other choice the defendant gets is, am I going to testify or not? And again, their lawyer will probably consult with them, but that's totally up to them. If they say, no, I'm not doing it, they can't be forced to do it because it violates your constitutional right. I will say this, though. I firmly believe, especially in a self-defense case, based on what I've seen over the years doing this, especially if you've taken a life, juries want to hear from the defendant.
Really? Mm-hmm. And over all of the cases that you've helped with, does the defense attorney, is he more pro to have his defendant testify, or are they less likely to have him testify? Or is it really just case dependent?
Yeah, it's case by case. I just did about 8 months ago, I did a homicide case. It was a stabbing, female on female. And the client already had a massive history of trauma. Like she'd been kidnapped, she had been trafficked, all kinds of crazy stuff. And they had some pretty long, hard conversations with her about not testifying and why she might think about not doing that. And she did listen. And she didn't testify. And she wouldn't have done well if she did. Just because of her mental health.
Trauma.
Yeah. But it was interesting. The prosecutor in that case was willing to put in a lesser included of manslaughter. And she dug her heels in. She goes, no, it was self-defense. I mean, I tried to get her to do it. The attorneys tried to get her to do it. And she's like, no. So she was charged with felony robbery, felony murder. That's when you murder somebody in the commission of another felony, and intentional murder.
Wow.
After the trial was done and the jury got their jury selections, they went out to deliberate. They were out 4.5 hours, including dinner. And that's typically not a real good sign. They came back not guilty on the felony robbery, so therefore she's not guilty on the felony murder, but they found her guilty on the intentional murder. And I told the two attorneys, I said, I would be willing to bet money if she would have allowed them to put the manslaughter on there, they would have found her for the manslaughter, not the intentional murder. So now, because on a manslaughter, she could have gotten parole before 25 years. On intentional murder, you're going to do your 25 years, maybe 40.
Hard time.
Yeah. She's going to do the 25. Then, at some point after that, she could be considered for parole. But if she doesn't get it, she's going to do the 40.
Dang.
25 years old.
Yeah, she'll never get to experience what it's like to be a normal, non-incarcerated person. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's too bad. And it's crazy, even though you feel like your actions are justified, like you're saying, like, we don't know what the jury's going to do. Like, your life will change. Honestly, yeah. I imagine either way, guilty or not guilty, your life is forever changed.
Right. Yeah. You know, look, even people who never get criminally charged, especially like on a home invasion or you've had to use deadly force and take a life, it changes your life. Even break-ins, you know, people, like if somebody breaks in your home and you're not there, most people either have to install a serious layers of security that's expensive to feel comfortable, or they move. They'll sell the house and move. It affects them that strongly. Very common.
You know, and it's funny. Like we think, at least dudes think, anyways. Because I can't imagine how women think. I'm not capable of understanding that mindset. But we think, yeah, if something happens, I'll be fine. Like if I have to shoot somebody in my house, whatever, it's my house. But when I reflect on it, like if I had to do something like that, I think I would have to move. I mean, I built this house with my bare hands. But if I had to take a life, even in defense, like I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could deal with being in that space anymore.
Well, and the other factors are, what if it's in the media? What if you're in a smallish town, you know? And what if your neighbors start giving you the stink eye because they think you're a murderer or whatever,
yeah.
Right? I mean, there's those factors. I've seen people have to leave their job, move. And
yeah, it's crazy.
And there was a case like that, and the guy never even shot anybody. He just pointed the gun at somebody that threw a frozen water bottle and hit him in the head. It was like a brick.
And he didn't shoot him, but
no,
it was just...
It was all over the news. Antifa was involved. Antifa, they wrote his wife's work. She was a nurse.
Doxed her.
She was a nurse. And they said, this woman's a racist killer. If you don't fire her, we are going to come down and raise holy hell outside your hospital. They fired her.
Wow.
Yeah. They had to move. They put his truck, his license plate, online, everywhere, Facebook. Be on the lookout for this guy. He had to sell the truck. He had to close his business.
That's amazing.
He never even shot. He didn't even shoot the gun.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sad that we live in a society where that can happen. I mean, we already live in a society that I feel like, just from my perception, is getting increasingly dangerous. And maybe it's not, But I feel like it's getting crazier out in the public. So more people want to carry. More people want to have ways to defend themselves. But that story you just said, the guy didn't even shoot, but his life is forever different.
Yeah. We know crime has gone up. That big scandal that just happened, right?
Yeah, they just admitted it. Yeah.
Yeah. The FBI said, well, those numbers that were quoted are not the real numbers. This is the real numbers. I mean, we know that's, the flood that's coming across our border is making many, many places unsafer. I mean, that's just the way it is. And that's why I started doing, stuff on X, to try to help people out. So, social, the internet has explicitly forever changed how fast people can dox you and come after you and your family, your kids. For years when our kids were kids, now they're adults out on their own, like they could not use the last name. They could not, one of our boys was a really good athlete, and every year I went through this. Picture in the paper, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. On social media, they couldn't use the last name. I had all this stuff in place because I knew at some point they could be drug into something that I didn't want them drug into, right? Especially when I was doing, for a couple of years, I did a bunch of executive protection work for a group that we did stalking cases, and pretty high profile international musicians. And most of those people are crazy. Like they like certified crazy. And so, and then of course with me testifying, spell your name and your last name, where do you live, blah, blah, blah. There's some of those on the internet. And I did a really high profile case a couple of years ago that was national news. And I testified in that case. And I wasn't off the stand 15 seconds. And my email alerts were just going crazy. And I'm like, what is going on? And all these people were emailing through the website. You're a piece of crap. We hope you get killed, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
Good
I'm
grief.
like, whoa. I mean, it was that fast.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, technology is a blessing and a major curse at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a common question. We had it this last Wednesday. Can training help you or hurt you? And the answer is it can do both. It just depends. You just have to understand this. We pay prosecutors to prosecute people they think are criminals. And if they're labeling you a criminal, whatever they can find to use to convict you, they will try to do it.
They will.
And then it's up to the judge to either let it in or not let it in. Right? The most common story I always tell is not a case I worked on. I read about it. Guy shot a guy in self-defense. They executed a warrant. They took all his guns, all his ammo, all his guns mag, anything related to firearms they took. Well, he had saved all his targets. I don't know why. He was just saving them all. And he was using the silhouette targets like law enforcement use, the black silhouette. In opening statements, because they can do this kind of stuff in opening and closing, that prosecutor brought all those targets in and said to the jury, see, this guy's been training to kill people, black people, all his life, because the person he shot was black. That he was a black guy. And that's what they said about those targets.
Wow.
That's why I always say don't engrave crazy stuff on your guns. Don't hang, signs up. My 45 is faster than 911 or, that kind of stuff. Well, for one, you're just telling people you got guns in your house. So that's a problem.
That's like putting a gun sticker on your truck.
Yeah. Just because if they can show somehow or accuse that that's part of your mindset, like that you were planning on doing this isn't just an intentional straight up homicide, they'll do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Dragging 30 years of targets out there just to hem you up in court, that is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of the time here. What are some, if you had 3 pieces of advice to give potential carriers for self-defense and like long-time carriers of self-defense, what do you think they would be?
So if you really wanted a well-grounded platform, get training that's based on stress, survival stress, learn about that, and is based on reality. So there's some reality-based training there, right? That's the first one. The second one would be you really should invest some time in understanding how the criminal justice system and the civil system really work if you're charged for a crime and or civilly sued. So that way you can make choices that help decrease that happening to you. Like either in training, in documentation, getting training like how to interface with 911, first responders, firemen, police, and have as part of that second part, you need to know up front you have a resource that is good at defending self-defense. So maybe that's through your prepaid legal, or maybe you know a criminal defense attorney that does this stuff, right? And lastly, just make everything you do courtroom relevant. Meaning, if I do this, or if I carry this, or if I wear this, like what you're even wearing at the time, if I end up in court, is this going to make it easier for me to be convicted or successfully civilly sued? Or is it going to make it harder? And those would be the 3 things I would say.
Awesome. Well, Steve, I appreciate you. Is there a place my listeners can find you and interact with you more?
Well, I'm on X, and as you know, I'm working to try to put together a podcast a platform.
Yeah.
But I'm not a tech guy, so I got to get some help with that. So I can do that out of my training center. My website is currently being redesigned because it hasn't been redesigned in it's never been redesigned. It's the old original website. And my web guy, he was my first partner. He's like, no, we got to fix this. This thing's horrible. It was good back in the day, but it's horrible now.
Sure.
And that's going to be more interactive. So if you go to the website now, you can email me there, 3tierservices.com. But it's a horrible website, so no judgment. The new one's coming.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of technology, right? Everything changes.
Yeah, and if any of your people are on X, they can just do a search for 3-Tier Services LLC.
And I'll tell you right now, spending time on your spaces on X, there's a ton of information that gets shared. Like I mentioned the last one you did a couple days ago, that I was really hoping people were paying attention, because you leave these little nuggets of truth in the conversation, and I don't know how many people pick them up, and hopefully they do. But yeah, you got a lot of experience in and stuff to share that people really need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I hope they do. I mean, I'm not volunteering my time just to hear myself talk.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So, I mean, if I can help, listen, I have seen so many families just devastated when somebody has defended themselves in the family and somebody gets criminally charged and convicted. I mean, I'm helping a lady right now. Her son's doing 25 years. Never been in trouble in his life. Somebody pointed a gun at him, and he shot him, and he's in prison. And she met me through those sessions I do on X, and she actually sat in there for probably a month, not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finally reached out to me. And so I said, I want to talk to you. And when I heard their story, I said, I want to help you with this. So.
Awesome.
Anyhow, hey, thanks for having me on, man. Anytime. I'm happy to support your platform anytime. Instructors
Awesome.
should
I
support other
appreciate it.
instructors. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to get over to your training center here probably pretty soon, hopefully. So
Yeah.
come
I'll
hang
let
out.
you know. I'll let you know when I get back. I'm driving back tomorrow, so I should get that training on the calendar. It'll be in the middle of November sometime.
Okay.
All right.
That works for me.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
All right. You too.
Stay
You guys
safe.
stay safe. All right.
See ya.
Thanks. All right. Bye.